So I will call the meeting of the Select Board of February 21st, 2024 to order. Note this meeting is being televised, streamed, or recorded by Bourne TV. If anyone in the audience is recording or videotaping, they need to acknowledge it at this time. Use of flash photography during Select Board meetings is prohibited. All items within the meeting agenda are subject to deliberation and votes. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Seeing none, moving on. Is there anyone in the audience recording? You have to acknowledge it. I don't know if we put that in. No? Okay, none. Okay. First item on the, second item is signing of the March 5th, 2024 election warrant for presidential preference primaries.
Motion to authorize the board to sign the warrant forms for March 5th, 2024 presidential primary.
So motion by Peter, is there a second?
I'll second, sure.
Second by Melissa. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. 4-0-0. You are all set.
Thank you, Barry.
Thanks, Barry.
And again, thank you for accommodating me.
Well, luckily, they had a meeting scheduled.
Thank you very, very much.
Next item is policy workshop marijuana for the board to start discussing the process. There's a number of items in our packet. But before we start on that, Marlene had a suggestion that we kind of ask ourselves two questions. And I may have to try to open my email, or maybe you can just say it, kind of like what you said about, what are we trying to, what is it important, what do we feel is important for us to achieve through this? And are there things we want to avoid? Is that what you said?
Yes, pretty much. Kind of not necessarily for any specific detail, but overall, your end state, what do you want to see that you would feel would be successful, and what are some things that you might want to avoid having as unintended consequences, and just kind of so we can have a little bit of a compass to guide the, because we can dive into all of the details, but if we don't have the larger framework, or if there isn't agreement among you on what the larger framework is, then it's, we could run into a lot of conflict. And conflict is fine, but if we can set some guideposts for a year from now or 5 years from now, how would a successful, what would a success story look like? And what do you want to avoid along the way? What are some pitfalls that you might foresee wanting to avoid along the way?
Any thoughts?
Well, we want to avoid any legal actions taken against us. I think that's the big picture, right?
So litigation risk?
Litigation risk.
Litigation would be my top
Thing to avoid?
thing to avoid. Yeah.
I just want a streamlined process. We're not reinventing the wheel. I think this could be actually pretty streamlined, and so I just think if we can make the process not as complicated as it needs to be and a common sense approach, I think it would go a lot smoother, and I think we could be done sooner.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not, I mean, not like there's not a billion examples to go through in Massachusetts, so it's not like it's new, it's the first license in the state. I mean, I couldn't find one particular, process that I looked any better than the other. This one had some that was good. This one had great things here. I mean, I don't know. I think that the Commonwealth has laid it out for us. So I think it's just a matter of picking our process and keeping it simple.
But I think I gave some thought to this, like, what are the, like, and part of this gets into criteria. Like, what are we looking for? We're looking for 3 retail outlets in Bourne that successful to me would be that they're still here, that they're successful operations, that they're located in places where they can be successful, that the people who are running them have experience and are going to be successful. I'd like to see, Bourne residents being able to take advantage of this opportunity. I'd like to see people in Bourne being able to get jobs from this. So those are the things I want to see. I don't want to have turnover. I want to make sure people are successful. I'm not sure whether I want a geographic distribution or whether that matters, in terms of other things. And I think the process, a transparent process that's, that we, in our process, ask the things that are important to us and leave, like, there's a process that the Cannabis Commission is going to make people go through. And I don't think we need to duplicate that process. I think we just need to kind of hone in on, it's kind of like the ABCC process. They have all kinds of things that you have to do. You have to, documentation. Let them do that kind of documentation. We kind of get that. I mean, and I think we really get the application that they've made to the ABCC. Am I right on that? Mm-hmm. So they don't actually, I don't think, apply to the Cannabis Commission until after us. The other thing I want to think about is how we integrate the community meetings. And I'm interested in seeing businesses that are supported, I guess, by the community too. So, yeah.
Well, if you think of it this way, I mean, especially in the beginning when when you do outreach, you want to know, people want to see what kind of facilities are being proposed, the size of the facility, the neighborhood environmental impacts of the community. Does it meet our goals or objectives, or does it meet our LCP?
What in the LCP would relate to this?
I don't think the LCP relates to it, but our strategic plan in some regards, when we want to promote businesses and,
Yeah.
I mean, as part of our strategic plan, I think a link, and anyone who's a business owner in the community or a resident in the community is already
Yeah.
part of that strategic plan.
Right,
So
right.
the link's already there.
Yeah.
It's just bringing it's just bringing a business to the town that could, like you said, generate jobs and bring revenue. So it's part of the strategic plan, or even the LCP is you want a stable business that's owned by local
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, I think that's important for me as well. I mean, I think we've already, like I said, it's not, a lot of the processes are already written. And it's the businesses we need to support, and that's how I'm seeing it.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
I mean, that's what our, like you just said, the strategic plan is, I mean, we're here to support the businesses through it, and I think we should be, the voters spoke, we're doing this work, and I think our job now is to obviously make a fair and equitable process. With the least community impact, we realize it's a different type of business for the town, and some people are not gonna love it, and some people are gonna be very happy. So I think it's really a matter of supporting these businesses so that they can open and we can have a good process to make it happen without making them poor and making it difficult and hard to do. I think it should be obviously a good process considering, what it is, but I think I feel like that's my job, is to figure a way to get this done so that we can support these businesses, because I'm looking at it as any other business, even though it's cannabis.
And the community outreach is onus on the applicant.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
thank you.
But we do have to figure out how we're gonna fit that into our
Yes,
process.
I agree,
Like
yeah.
where it's gonna
Yeah,
fit in.
timing and the allotted amount of
Yeah.
time and, sure.
Yeah.
And a lot of them I saw, they ask that in the application process. It says, how are you supposed to, one of the questions to some of them was, how will you implement your community meetings?
Outreach, yeah. It's a narrative. Yeah.
And it asked that specifically,
Right.
so.
but at the same time, I mean, they're gonna be going probably before the Board of Health, before us, before the Planning Board or ZBA. So they're gonna be a lot of different bites at the apple to see who these applicants are. But I think having them all together in an outreach meeting to begin with, you know, you get streamlining it, and, you know, however, throughout the process, you know, whoever is, I don't know if we're gonna choose the applicants first before they go to the planning board and get the permits afterwards. You know, it's part of our.
Yeah, that's
screening
part of our
That's-
zoning says
that's the
that.
zoning says
The
that
zoning
they
that
have to
we
go through that
passed
here
says
before they
that
get there.
they have to have a host community agreement with the select board in
First.
order to go to the planning
Planning
board
board.
for zoning.
But I think having an outreach meeting saying that these are the applicants that are interested, at least they can just sound themselves, the community has a
No,
chance.
they
to-
have that's their
That's their
responsibility.
responsibility.
I know, no, but, yeah, yes, it's their responsibility, but if we hold a public forum for, you know, at
That's
least.
not on us. That's not part of that's part of their process.
We have a forum, we
That's
would have a
part of their
we would have a
requirement.
forum where they come to us.
Yeah,
And they
I-
present to
right.
us.
I think in the-
And they actually probably should have had their community outreach meeting to say, I had my community outreach meeting and this is the results of that. And like if you look at the Boston one, do you have letters of support from local officials? You have letters of support from, and that's kind of part of the cannabis thing too, because I remember like when they were trying to do the medical here, they came to the select board, so.
I don't know, I was just thinking
Is
back
that,
to.
I mean, are we in the right direction here? I mean, do you think, Marlene, is this the kind of thing you're looking at, or?
I think these are helpful things that if there's agreement on these, I think these are helpful things that you should continue to reflect back on as we get into the details. So these are questions I think you as the board ask yourself as you go along. So what I've captured is things you want to achieve are a streamlined process, simplicity, successful businesses, which to some extent is outside of our control as a
Right.
municipality,
Of course.
but that's, that's the end state we would like to see. Local jobs, a transparent local process, community integration, alignment with the strategic plan, local ownership, fair and equitable. And things you want to avoid are litigation risk, instability, meaning marketplace instability, where the businesses are failing regularly, duplication of the CCC process, and negative community impacts.
Right.
So those are the things that I've captured for kind of like your
Yeah.
touch points. And those are the things I think as we get into the details that you need to talk about, is what you're developing here meeting these types of your objectives in these areas. Did I get that
Yeah.
down right? Okay.
I think that's good. Okay, so what do we want to talk about next? Do we want to talk about criteria or the scoring system or the outline of steps?
I think one of the things when I was going through this process, the three things I think are important to answer are time, place, and manner. That was kind of the guiding, what I guided my outline with, and some of the like the phases, the 4 phases that originally I had put in the PowerPoint presentation. And I think if we can get through time, place, and manner, a lot of what we need to accomplish will happen through that, keeping those 3 things in mind. So, you know, for instance, with time, like how much allotted time are we going to give the applicants?
You mean in the open period of application?
Right, right. How much time are we giving ourselves for evaluation and scoring? How much time are we gonna, you know, put together an eligibility list? How much, the final selection, all of those different phases, I think time is important. Place is, you know, for place, one of the important things and one of the requirements with the regulations is where we're going to have this application published. What avenues are we going to take to ensure that we're doing enough outreach into the community at large to make them aware that these licenses are available, right? Do we do it at, do we, you know, have statements at select board meetings saying our application process is open, this is where you find it? You know, obviously on the town website and all the compliance issues revolving around place, right? Like, for instance, you know, even, I mean, we can dive a little bit more into that, but place, and of course, manner is the process itself. What does that application look like? You know, decisions about evaluation, what those forms look like, and then a final, you know, like evaluation, like, you know, I think it's important that not only we say yes to an applicant, or if we say no to an applicant, that we need to also give reasons why, right? And have, that has to be someplace as well.
There isn't a defined public hearing process for this, right? Like there is for alcohol licenses,
No,
right?
not,
So-
I mean, not
not
that
now.
I've read, or in the workshops that I've been to.
Yeah, so, but we have somewhat of a public hearing process for some other applications that are kind of, that are sort of different. So I think one of the things that we should talk about, because we have to talk about resources. So we're gonna need a webpage, obviously.
Yep.
A webpage. And is our application process going to be a paper process? And I'm not sure if Carver's process is in there, in some sort of automated system. Or are we going to do something to tie this into our, any kind of application process that we have, like for licenses, for Board of Health, or is that gonna be maybe step 2 or something? Is that a resource issue, like? I'm asking Marlene.
So, I think asking questions about resources is important. And one of the things that I would say is, I've watched the trainings, I've watched the webinars. This is logistically very confusing. And I think one of the resources we need is legal review on whatever. I don't know if, I can't answer that question because I don't know legally if we have the right to say that the application, it can be one way or another. Or does it have to be, do we have to take it all ways?
Like we know there's an example in the packet that says right away that they have to have wet signatures on the original application, so that would involve
one is
bringing
that?
it in. Like Concord, California.
Yeah,
but-
from
Yeah,
California, and see, part of the risk here, part of the risk, for me at least, that I'm identifying, is we are using examples from other statutes and
I
other
think we should
legal-
not use the
Another.
California statute.
No, I know,
think
I don't
we
know,
should-
I didn't,
Funker method.
I didn't know
I
why.
think we
it
should
was-
just
I
eliminate
didn't know
that
why
from
it was in
discussion.
there, so
Other than
I
looking
did
at some of
notice
the
there were a
criteria.
couple things, like the wet signature and
But
small
even-
things, but I was curious why it was there too.
But even the Massachusetts examples are, all of the
Yeah, they're all
Massachusetts
different.
examples,
I know.
none of them are under the new
Rules,
procedures.
I know,
They're all under the old.
procedures.
And that's a big shift. I mean, I have logistical questions about what our legal obligations are on some of the language that's come out of the CCC, there's a lot of room for interpretation, and I can't interpret that.
Right,
Well, that's we have,
Well, we're
that's
not
we have town
lawyers,
council for
exactly.
that, to help us.
right. So, there are some towns that use, Clearview is what we use for our online stuff, right? Isn't that the name of it?
OpenGov.
OpenGov, is that the name of it?
Yeah.
So, and I'm gonna use Brookline, for example. If you're gonna go through their application, you've gotta log in, and you've gotta create a login, and you've gotta do it that way. Right? And that's the only way that we accept building permits now, right?
That's the way we accept building permits, but we are on solid legal ground with building
Okay.
permits. I am sure Brookline is going to get legal challenges on an applicant saying, I can't submit it online. And those are the types of questions if we're talking about resources, some of the resources you have to allocate are, you as the Board of Selectmen need to bring in town council, and you need to work, town council needs to be here with you, working through some of this stuff.
Okay.
And that's an allocation of resources we need to commit to. Because if we tell someone, you have to submit it online.
Well,
We
why
have
do we
to-
don't do it online? Maybe we make it a paper application. Carver, is Carver online? I don't know. Carver has a fine application. I like their application. You could put it online.
I think
You
most
could make it a fillable
applications-
form.
That's sort of my thought, like,
Access the application
Yeah.
through the website, but
yeah.
it's printed and handed in.
Yeah.
From all the literature that I read. That you access the application on the web, because we have to have that somewhere.
Yeah, and it has our criteria and our rating system.
All of the
all that
forms,
has to be
all
on
of
our
how
web-
we
has to be
evaluate, that
available
all
on our
has to be
website.
public. Yep.
Right.
In an inconspicuous place, according to the regs.
Yeah.
So,
I think
I
you are
think we-
safe taking paper applications.
I-
I'm not sure you're safe requiring
I don't-
online.
And I think it's probably easier and better. I mean,
I think it's
hopefully it would be a
easier.
fillable form,
And
but
it's-
like, but that's another thing. I mean, maybe it's not. I mean, it's a paper application, and
And
they
I
can
would
just
re-
add, like, they can just say, see attachment A or something, yeah.
I would strongly require, there's only one way to do it.
Okay,
You don't offer multiple options.
okay.
There's one way that an application comes in, there's one way, it has to be done in this way, so it can be clearly and simply and fairly and equitably judged to be
Yeah.
complete. So it has to be standardized, and it has to be only through one channel.
Yeah,
Right.
But if someone prints it off, fills it out, and scans it in as a document and email
No.
it in, is that adequate, or does
No.
that, or in hand stamped in?
I
with
like,
the-
I mean, I think wet signatures are
Hand it in
critical
and
in
get
a
it.
lot of re-
That's what you have to decide, but everybody has to do it the same exact way. So it's simple, it's clear, it's fair, and it's
well,
equitable.
what do we do, like, with an RFP? They have to hand deliver it or send it by certified mail? What's the process for that?
Yep.
What is it?
Yeah, it's,
Both.
it has to be printed out and submitted in hand. So, but there's criteria similar to the the RFP outlines exactly the standards of what is expected, what the forms are that needs to be included, so it's outlined for the staff as well as the applicant.
Right.
So I think that's what Marlene is getting to, is that it needs to be step-by-step process of, we will only accept submitted
Right.
copies, and it must be typed out. It can't be handwritten, because we don't want to mess up
No, oh, yeah.
misinterpreting somebody's handwriting, who writes
The
not
signature's the
legibly.
only thing that's,
Right, so, it must be typed, it must be, and there's the opportunity for a fillable PDF, but it has to be in paper format submitted. And then it's step-by-step guidelines in the process, it's posted as well as online.
Right.
I realize that
even who and
the
where.
policies are written by us, and we have companies that help us write policies, but I felt like right from the beginning that the town council should have been the first thing we did in a sense, because especially with the new changes to the Cannabis Commission's laws. So, I mean, I know it's been a few months now, but, I mean, I just, like Marlene just said, a lot of these examples we have aren't gonna work with the new.
But you have to give your town council a framework. You can't
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
you can't say
I
town
realize
council,
that.
right, give us our process.
Well, right.
Because he can't tell what the criteria are. So he does have to be involved. But I think that using an RFP type process, because that's what we're gonna be doing, right? We're gonna be saying, we will accept applications beginning, well, let's just say May
Set the date,
1st,
yeah.
2024, and applications must be received, whatever, like your wording you use, and they must include these items, and they must be received in the town administrators by 4 PM.
Is there consensus that we're doing an RFP? I mean, because you haven't actually voted that, or you
Yeah.
haven't actually decided that.
Well, is that what we're doing, I think we did decide that we're doing an open application process.
I do think you have to make firm, clear
conversations
decisions
about it.
along
Yeah.
the way.
Okay.
All right, so you want
Right, we're not giving, well, I guess we can have the conversation. We're not giving any priority processes.
It's
We're
not a first come,
having
first
any
served.
priority processes either, correct?
So, yeah, my
We're not having first come,
understanding,
first serve.
my understanding, and maybe we'll have a motion, we'll have a motion that says that the application process will not be first come, first serve. It will be an open
Competitive.
time period RFP type of, RFP type of process. And we will not be eliminating anyone from applying. Like, it's open, whether you're, because we're not gonna use equity, we're not gonna do exclusively equity candidates or.
That's what I'm saying, we're not having a
Women can-
priority
The
applicant
priority will be in the
process.
scoring process, not as an elimination from people applying. Are we agreed on those three things? RFP process,
Yeah,
So is
open
it
application,
so-
not first come, first served.
Okay.
And it will be an open application process where anyone can apply.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
so you want a motion
So,
to,
You want us to vote this?
I think so, yeah. I think we have to, I think,
Start narrowing it down.
yeah.
so RFP automatically makes it a competitive process, I guess.
Yeah,
So it's an RFP type process. I don't want to make it
Right, I'm not,
specifically,
it's
because I
a
don't want to get into any
competitive
confusion that we're
application
following
process.
any
It's
kind
not-
of particular law for this.
I think RFP, I think, you know, how
I
we do it
think you
in
just need to
our
define,
industry.
anyone can apply, because they're not anyone, they have to actually meet certain criteria. So that's outlined in an RFP. So you just have to be cautious with that word, with that term in your vote,
Yes.
MJ? All right.
So I think
Anyone who
it's
meets the criteria in the
Qualified
RFP
individuals
can
may
apply.
apply.
Thank you, yes, okay.
qualified.
Only because
Well, what I'm
if
talking
it's a
about,
vote, it's
Qualified
it's gonna be our
applicants only.
directive.
yeah, but what I'm talking about is, there's a lot of Newton, Brookline, a bunch of them. They will not accept applications if you're not a disadvantaged woman, equity.
Disproportionately
Co-
disadvantaged, social
yeah.
equity,
If you're not in
empowerment,
those four groups, you can't apply.
veteran.
Yeah, I just want, for
Yeah.
clarification purposes, because
Are
if
we
you're taking
gonna-
a vote,
Yeah.
it needs to be very specific.
Are we gonna, well, we don't know what the criteria is.
The criteria, but, yeah.
All right.
So the competitive application process for qualified applicants,
Qualified applicants,
Right.
exactly, yeah.
Outlined in the RFP.
outlined in the RFP.
So I've got competitive application process outlined in the RFP. Do we need to say an open period for applications?
It's,
Or is that included in that?
I think
That's
that,
included in that.
that's included, the
Wait a minute.
timeline is, you know,
It's not first
Say-
come, first served,
it's
and it's an open
competitive
process to anyone, an open process in which anyone can apply who meets the criteria of the RFP.
So why don't we just say competitive application process for qualified applicants outlined in the RFP?
Okay, good. Is that a motion?
so move.
Can you read it one more time, Anne Marie?
Competitive application process for qualified applicants outlined in the RFP,
As outlined in the.
as outlined in the RFP.
So that was a Peter motion?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Is there any comment from the public?
Now you can.
Is now the appropriate time for us to weigh in, or?
If you want to weigh in on this particular question,
I think my comments would.
you have to go to the microphone because we are being recorded by Bourne TV.
Okay, Steve Stroney, Monument Beach. Okay, well, I've listened to everything that everybody has said, and I think you guys are definitely on the right path on this. I would, as far as the motion goes, the only quibble I have with that, and you can probably straighten it out with an RFP, the language within the RFP, but somebody might think they're a qualified applicant. When they get in front of you, it's going to be obviously that they're not qualified. So I'm not sure how you can judge when somebody applies initially whether they're qualified or not, because that's part of the process is to determine who is first qualified, and then secondly, who is most qualified. I think that's how that would go.
Well, I think my thought process for that, in the second piece of this, when the applications come in and we set we would have highly advantageous, right? So there would be, however that.
We haven't decided how we're going to,
Right,
how we're
right.
going to rate people, but the RFP will set out like, for example, a qualified engineer who has experience
Yep.
building bridges.
And so that's-
So we haven't decided what the criteria that will be in the RFP, right?
Yes.
Can I just, so, almost all RFPs are set out with minimum criteria. And that is essentially objective, yes, no. You meet the criteria or you don't meet the criteria.
Right.
So anyone who's not eligible would be weeded out at the point of the minimum criteria. Once you get through the minimum criteria screen, then you get into your comparative criteria. And that, I mean, this is typical structure of an RFP,
right.
is if you don't meet your minimum criteria, you don't proceed on to evaluating them on the competitive criteria.
Right.
But it's one RFP, and you have to submit, the applicant submits everything
Right.
before the deadline, and then you're screened on the minimum criteria, minimum performance standards, and then you're screened on the competitive.
And that's the advantageous, highly advantageous
Right.
portion.
Right.
Okay.
So as far,
sorry,
if
go
I
ahead.
may continue. So as far as the criteria goes, and I think.
We're
this-
not talking criteria now. We're only
Well-
talking about this motion that's on the table right now, which is, we are just deciding our process. It is a competitive application process for qualified applicants as outlined in the RFP.
Okay.
We're not getting into our criteria yet. That's a
Okay,
whole.
fair enough. I'll my comments.
Well, your first comment that you made, well, say it again, Steve.
Well, it was just about using that term, qualified candidates or qualified applicants, because initially, how do you make that determination? But I think Marlene nailed it right on the
Minimum
head.
criteria.
Listen, when you read through the RFP, that's gonna give you the minimum qualifications, and
Yeah.
that's the answer to the
Yeah.
question.
Okay.
So was the motion eligible applicants or qualified applicants?
Qualified?
I have eligible written
Eligible.
down. I mean,
think
it doesn't
eligible.
really matter, I just don't want to create confusion.
What did you have?
I said qualified.
You said qualified, okay.
Yeah, we said qualified, but I guess that's fine. Maybe it is eligible.
It's an open process.
Yeah, I guess.
I think the
like you
purpose
said,
of this
if it
is
has
that
the
we're not gonna
objective-
say, if you're not a woman,
Yeah.
minority, a disadvantage, then you can't apply. We're not gonna say that, because
Correct.
Can't
we're gonna give points for that.
And we're not doing the opposite of that, only being proprietary to those.
Right, yeah. Okay, any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstentions, it's unanimous, 400. And just in case Jared told us he would be late today because he has a prior commitment, so he's gonna get here when he can. And then, do we still have to watch the time, Melissa, for you to be
You have to
done
be
by
out of here.
4:30?
I'm supposed to be, I had a hard stop at 4:30.
Okay,
Well, I'm supposed to be on a call at 4:30, but that's okay. As long as let's just keep going.
I'm gonna set an alarm for 4:20, just so we pay attention.
It's all right. Don't stop for me.
Okay. All right, what's the next thing we have to do?
All right, so we decided on the RFP process.
Then we're gonna have to decide on our minimum qualifications, right? Or what do you wanna, what should we talk about next? Steps in the licensing process? So if we have we're gonna put out an RFP, right? So so in that open time, so in Carver, the applicant contacts the building commissioner to make sure their proposed location is in the, meets the zoning, so,
Yeah, I don't recommend I don't recommend modeling us after that process, to be
Okay.
honest with you, internally. I don't.
okay. So, so in the process, they have to give us a location, right?
Yes.
Is location part of their application?
Yeah,
Yes. It's required, I believe.
yeah.
You can't get a host community agreement unless you have a site.
So,
Oh, does that create a problem?
what?
Well, I guess not. You just have to have a site, then it goes to planning board.
It doesn't, well, see,
Yeah, okay. You do have to have a site. You do have to have a site in order to have an HCA.
you have to, yes, because the HCA process lists, you have to
Yes,
say
yeah.
where your location is, or I think the HCA template also has the site or kind of site to be determined. You can do either one in HCA. Go ahead, Kevin.
Kevin Howe, Miami Beach. It should, well, is a suggestion, not only a site, but have some sort of legal contract over that site.
Right.
Yes.
Because someone can come in and say, I have an idea on a site, and you might say, okay, you've won this process, you're in the HCA, and they don't, and then they have to go out and get that. And that will extend the process of them not, maybe even, that's what happened in a lot of other communities. They got an HCA and they didn't have a place to go, they tried to find a place to go, couldn't go anywhere, and ultimately didn't end up opening up.
And they're tying up a license.
Exactly. It delays the process of stores getting opened and the town getting revenue. So you have to have a site with some sort of legal contract in place for that location.
Right. We only have, what type of establishment, right? We want to know the type of establishment. I have been very confused about the community outreach. Are we gonna have that community outreach during the open application process? Or are we gonna have qualified, are we gonna have some sort of initial screening that says these people have met the qualifications for further review by the select board? And then give them time to do their community outreach? Or are we gonna have them, anybody that wants to be,
Well, if the competitive, well, that depends right on the minimum criteria. and what we designate as minimum criteria, and then move into the competitive criteria. So, do we want the minimum criteria to include community outreach, or does that, if they put in the minimum, if they, like you said, if they meet the minimum criteria, town hall saying, okay, these applicants meet the minimum criteria, because then they move on to like the competitive criteria. I think
You guys
most
have a thought on
communities
this?
Is
require.
the community
I think
out,
most communities require them to have the community outreach.
yeah, but wouldn't they do that after they've been chosen? Is-
So the
I
Cannabis
mean,
Control
why
Commission
would you have
requires
somebody do it?
applicants
Yeah.
to post in the newspaper and have 2 community outreach
Right.
meetings.
Right.
And you can have them in a setting like this, or we had them at our location when we did it in Carver. We posted it in the newspaper twice, gave everybody plenty of notice that we were doing it. We put it, I think it was on the town, I don't think it went up on the town website. They might have posted it for us on the town website. But we had it at the location. We invited the community in to see what the space looked like and where it was gonna be. But that's part of the CCC
Yeah.
process. So you have to do it for them no matter what, in order just to get your license. So anybody who comes in and has an issue can then go to the CCC with, I don't like this because of this. Or write a letter against your location.
So is that more a part of the Cannabis Control Commission process as opposed to our process?
Yeah, that's their required
They're
process.
required.
They require you to do it, whether you say to do it or not, and you have to do it within so many days of applying for your license and everything else. So I guess you can make us people do it ahead of time, and then they probably might have to do it again because the process takes so much time. Or you can just allow it to be a CCC issue.
Well, if you want it part of a, like, actual criteria of evaluating and comparing, the minimum would be 2 outreach meetings. That's the minimum requirement, that they
Right.
prove that they, and then when you go into the evaluation portion of it and comparing, then you have definitions of what is advantageous or not advantageous, just doing the bare minimum of outreach, or you could elaborate on what is like the best outreach that you possibly do in our community, and then you evaluate the applicants that way. That's if you want to include that as an
criteria.
evaluation criteria.
And I think you would be asking them to submit their outreach plan to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So not to have it done,
Okay.
but they submit, what is your community outreach plan?
Okay.
And I think also too, well, we're not getting into the criteria, but, instead of requiring that because it's already required, letters of support, like the outreach plan, but part of that criteria includes, letters of support when we get the comparative criteria process.
So I like the community outreach plan. So part of the application would be that they would submit a community outreach plan.
Exactly, yeah.
Can we circle back, because I feel like we got,
Offsite, yeah, go ahead.
can we circle back to any other resources that you can identify that we're going to need to allocate or reallocate or find?
Well, so we've identified town council, right? Mm-hmm. If we,
If we-
And a webpage.
IT.
Yeah, so the resources I have that we've discussed were a webpage and town council.
right. But the webpage is, we're gonna do some sort of, oh, we didn't say this, did we? We're gonna do a paper application, right?
Yes?
So administratively, we need,
We're gonna
As a
do a
resource,
paper,
right?
we're gonna do a
Administration.
paper application that will be available on the website. If we're going to do some sort of, fillable form, we need some sort of, administrative, staff support for creating that.
That would be in the RFP. That would be an appendix.
So when you say staff support,
Right.
Is it your expectation that Town of Bourne staff will be filling out people's forms for
No,
them?
no, creating the forms.
Okay,
Collecting.
okay.
No,
Okay.
That we need staff support to create the forms, to get the
Okay.
forms up on the website,
Right.
to
Okay.
get like the
Okay.
fillable form
Okay.
created,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
people are
When
filling
they-
out their own
Right,
forms.
and then when they,
Well, like,
you
okay,
know,
I want to make sure.
who are they handing it into, right?
So
So those- that's staff
those
support.
aren't resource. Those are, I don't see those as resource questions.
Just a
Those
function
are
of the
process.
process.
Those are process questions. Resources are, we have to create a website. It's a requirement of the
Yep.
new regulations. That's gonna take some time and money. And
Right.
it makes me very concerned what's required on that website, because we, as a municipality, are assuming a lot of risk in that website, if you read the regulations and what's required. So those are the types of things, there's gonna be some pretty hefty legal review. So those are the types of things that I wanna talk about resource, like, the town of Bourne is on the hook for what that website says. And I will tell you, in no other industry do we advise applicants on how to do their project. By regulation now, it's our responsibility as the municipality to be providing advice. That makes me extremely nervous, because we don't do that for any other industry. We don't do that for any other applicant. We don't do that for anybody else who comes in and applies for any sort of permit. So those are the types of things we have to be very careful with. So the webpage is a serious commitment. It's a serious resource commitment. Town council is a serious resource commitment. The fillable form, I mean, we can create that.
Yeah.
It will take staff time, but I don't consider that to be like a resource
Yeah,
level
okay.
commitment.
What about the some sort of tracking form? Will it fit into our normal tracking form that we have for things where, I don't know, Board of Health, I don't know who else is gonna have to be staff or,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's all gonna I don't know.
Yeah.
I cannot give you an estimate on like the ripple on staff time right now, because I don't know to what
We don't
extent.
have the process set, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, with us going to town council for, for help with this, that's gonna create an expense. Are we gonna be asking the applicant, similar to like we do a comprehensive permit and you wanna do peer review, are we gonna put money into an escrow account that we draw back, or?
Well, I think there's two pieces. There's council expense for review of a specific application. There's also all this front-end work that needs to be reviewed by town council. So before anybody even applies, town council has to help us create and review all of this. So I think, yes, there needs to be some sort of fee system set up where the specific review of your particular application, we charge a fee for. But all of this infrastructure we have to create first, we can't capture by fees.
we're gonna have to talk with town council, because they, in this new cannabis thing, they changed about how you can charge for things. So we're gonna have to make sure that however we charge, there's gonna be application fees, and there's application fees that are, your initial application fee. Some of the towns do like an initial application fee, and then more like a application fee when you actually finally get permitted, like you're gonna actually be going forward. So then, so the fee structure, we're gonna have to work with. Do we need a town meeting appropriation for,
He just likes his little bed.
do we need,
Council?
well, for website development, town council, do we need an appropriation?
I have no idea how much this is gonna cost.
Or do we create a revolving account there that you can,
No, you can't create a revolving account.
Got to appropriate it somehow.
I don't even know how to estimate this at this
Yeah, but
point.
we might need to estimate some of the money, you know, for the special town meeting, so that we have money available at May 6th to do stuff. I think we should consider it.
Yeah.
We should consider some sort of I mean, even if it's 50,000 or 100,000, whatever
Yeah.
we decide to say that we're appropriating money for setting up the website, legal counsel review, doing the things that we need to do to get this appropriately set up.
Yeah.
And then we'll recoup it later in fees, but we have to make an upfront,
Yeah, we do have to make an upfront investment.
right. Chair, just to bring you up to speed, we did have we're trying to vote some things so that we don't have to revisit them again, you know, so we voted to have a competitive application process for open to qualified applicants as outlined in the RFP. So we're not gonna prevent people if they meet the minimum criteria in the RFP. We're not gonna prevent anybody say you have to be, you know, whatever.
You have to have,
Yeah, you have to meet these, you know, whatever we set up as our criteria. But so, and we also talked about the fact that, I don't think we voted this. We didn't vote on a paper
No,
application.
the only vote you
Yeah.
took was the
Yeah.
competitive.
So we're talking about really making it, whether it's a fillable form or whatever, but a paper application, not an online website-based application like we do for building permits. It's really gonna be an application that's available on the website,
but you have to fill it out and bring it
but you
in.
have to fill it out and bring it in typed form, not handwritten.
Which is good, because
Good
that brings them into the office and it gets us eyes on it before we go back and forth with it. No, you're missing this, you're missing this, you're the.
That is not at all how an
No.
RFP works. No, no. Everything
go
is
back and say you
sealed.
missed something.
It is, nothing is reviewed
Oh, I thought you were
early.
saying just a fillable form.
There's no back
Oh,
and forth.
no.
I want to be
Oh.
super clear about that. So that's a big difference than any other application that comes in.
Okay.
There is no back and forth at all.
No, so it's an RFP.
It's an RFP.
Yes.
Process.
So you said
it's
fillable
based-
form,
Well, I just mean like the form that you fill out as part of the RFP.
Or the RFP,
You
okay.
know, like, what type of license is it? What's your business legal name?
Okay.
There's a fillable form, not online form.
yes,
So
okay.
everything stays sealed.
Yes. Yeah.
Nothing is reviewed, nothing is opened until everything is opened together at the.
Correct.
And we track who actually takes out the packets, the packages.
Yes.
Yes,
Right.
Is there packets that? are
Yeah,
there?
so an RFP is pretty lengthy.
yeah.
So there's a cover sheet, there's a table of contents, it's got the minimum.
So
it's
what,
got
would our
all of the-
website say that you may obtain this, the application format from some
Packet.
person?
Yeah, so
Packet?
so currently on our website right now, we have an RFP procurement page, okay? And on there is a list of all the available ones that we have open, as well
Yeah.
as the ones that we have closed as of
Yeah.
right now. And you then register, you click on the link to the RFP, and it brings you up to a registration form, which then you fill out the contact information, especially if there's any addendums that are, like, let's, for example, the timeline changes as far as the date that is submitted.
Are we gonna require them to do a procurement registration?
We're gonna have to, because we need to create a list of people.
Yep.
Who, if we need to reach them with any changes.
Yep.
Like the snowstorm on the 13th, we had a bid due that day. We had to reach out to all of our plan holders list and
Don't
say,
close.
we're issuing an addendum. The bid opening will be will
Okay.
be
Next
tomorrow.
Right.
Right.
But it's, I mean, an
Okay,
an RFP we're not following an RFP under procurement law.
Right.
Right.
It's not an RFP under Chapter 30B or anything, but an RFP means certain things to us that we'll have to kind of translate.
Yeah.
And that's where, so if you don't want people to have to register, and if we're not going to be issuing an addendum, and then those are all things we need to talk about.
So MJ, a good example is actually the low-pressure system that we went through, that you were on the evaluation. If you look at that actual RFP, there was, it's a good template to use, so you can visually see what is kind of the synopsis, okay?
Yeah,
mean,
and I
of, like,
understand,
the meat of
but,
it.
I mean, we could even have in our, part of our RFP process, when you do an RFP, a lot of times you'll have a meeting where the people who are interested come and speak.
Yes,
Like,
you have a pre-meeting.
You know, we could
Yep.
have we could have a pre-meeting where
Yep.
people, we would talk about our criteria and that kind of stuff.
That's correct. And then, as you saw with that low-pressure system RFP, we had criteria outlined, and then after, all the forms were in the appendix, so, and you had a checklist of what was, it was
Yep.
very clear as to what was expected
Needed to be included and what documents need to be
And then also, it's very hand-holding as far as on paper, but not staff. Okay? So we do all of the effort to get them up for success. As long as they follow they check off that they have a number of addendums, each appendix and attachment is included and whatnot, okay? And then the directions as to how to seal it up, how to title it, how to send it in, where to send it in.
Directions for
It's-
every step of the way.
Everything is
Yeah.
outlined, okay? And then, as you
And
know,
if you don't follow these directions, you're disqualified.
that's,
Right.
because that's the minimum
Go back
requirement.
to
Those are the minimum
assay.
requirements.
Exactly.
You forgot.
Exactly. So then, as you know, afterwards, staff looks at it all as far as the proposal, making sure that all the criteria is met. And then we use the evaluation, the competitive portion to outline, and the evaluation team then looks at the proposals. And that's a process that you haven't even discussed yet. But it's a good template to use, and I can send that out to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can get an example of the standard that we use right now in town, okay?
So one of my questions is, in a procurement RFP,
Yep.
the staff does screen the minimum performance side before that is a staff screen. For this RFP, should the select board do that screen?
Depends, I think, what we end up with criteria.
Okay,
I think there'll be some criteria, there are some criteria that may be staff-related, but I don't think we can answer that yet.
okay, so maybe we can put that on our list of questions to revisit.
Right.
Because, I don't have a firm recommendation yet, but I think depending on what you're asking, I think there are things that I'm definitely gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, I
the
think
board needs
when
to
we
screen
start,
this.
yeah, I think as we go through criteria, we might want to identify whether, and we'll take location.
Whether it
Does
should
the
be screened
location-
right
Does the
away.
proposed location, is it fit into a marijuana overlay zone? The Board of Selectmen doesn't need to figure that out. That planning board or staff would figure out that address is in a marijuana overlay zone, staff, right? And there may be, I don't know other staff things that we might identify, but we'll figure that out.
But is there agreement that the select board will be doing the screening for all of the comparative criteria?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
For sure.
Yes.
Okay. So the minimum performance criteria might be a combination of staff
Right.
and board,
Yeah.
depending on what they end up being. But for all of the comparative criteria, there will be no review team, it will be the select board that
Right.
does it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And so, can we, I don't know if we have to do motions for all of this stuff, but I think we're getting consensus on a lot of them. So we're doing some sort of paper application process, right? Not an online application process. We're,
Well, that's, yeah. we can-
yeah, we're doing the select board will do all the comparative. The staff and/or select board will do the minimum criteria, depending on the criteria. What else have we, is there anything else that we've processed that we're leaning towards, and I don't know if we've done, but the community outreach plan will be part of the criteria, but not necessarily having had the community outreach meetings as part, unless we decide we want to have those happen for certain ones or something.
I think it might cause a little confusion with the applicants and their
Yeah, I
requirement
think the
from the
plan is
cannabis. I
gonna
think
be-
a plan, to have a plan in place, for us to have that knowledge is good, to actually have it, you know, they could run into trouble, like, you know, having to do things twice because the timelines didn't match up.
Do we want to talk about minimum criteria, scoring system?
Sure.
Or competitive criteria? Anyone have any ideas on evaluation criteria?
I mean, there's a ton of different ways. I saw one of them had like a 2,000 point scoring system. I mean,
Are you talking about the specific criteria?
specific or you mean?
Name, business, legal name,
Exactly.
legal business. Like for the, I think, property location probably should be a minimum. It's required anyway.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Safety and security should.
Property owner.
Well, let's
Information.
talk about property location. So on the Boston evaluation criteria, they talk about distance from a licensed retail marijuana establishment. We don't have any, so it doesn't.
Is there a, yeah.
Residential and commercial density near the site, distance from schools, social service, or treatment centers, access to public transportation, or accessibility and amount of on-site parking. What about location is important to us, just to know what it is, that it's in the overlay?
Oh, it would have to be in the overlay.
It has to be in the overlay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about location that we care about?
Well, once we know the location, we're gonna be able to see it. I don't know that we have to have every criteria about it.
Accessibility is a big thing with me, you know, that it's on a main road that, and there's enough parking on site for it with the employees and with,
That's all under planning board review too.
Exactly, yeah. It was
I
like a
think
lot.
I know
Location
that
is-
it's part of site plan, but I'm just saying it's part
Location's
of,
pretty much, as long
Yeah,
as it's in the
I mean,
overlay
those
and where it
decisions,
is.
yeah.
no, but it's
Well,
here,
but
in-
has to
in
be
terms of us, are we gonna look at that? Are we gonna look and say, this looks like a good location? Are we gonna evaluate the location ourselves? Or is
Absolutely.
anything that's in an overlay, do we care about distance from schools? I mean, we
We
know
do.
some people are concerned about
But
distance from
We,
schools.
right.
But
Or
that's,
playgrounds,
Or-
or like,
right.
when the planning board was doing the, Sandwich Road location, and it's right next to Heathfield? So, I mean, is distance from schools, you know,
schools, recreation, town recreation areas, playgrounds, ballparks, et cetera.
So those would be comparative.
Yeah.
yeah, that's
So,
what we're
mid-
talking about.
No,
No, we're
that's
talking about
that's
minimum
not what you're talking
criteria.
about. So if we put together a chart,
Okay?
your minimum requirement is that it's in the
this
overlay,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
That's a minimum
Yes.
requirement, in overlay.
But then once it comes
And
to
then-
us, then we can go through all the rest of those pieces.
If you identify
Becomes
it in
comparative.
your RFP as
Right.
criteria,
Yes.
only if it's identified, otherwise it has no weight.
No, right.
So if you want to, so what do you want to, so let's stay on location. The minimum requirement for location is it's in overlay. If you want to create a comparative evaluation with points associated, what are you looking at? What do you want your comparative criteria to be to assign points?
So proximity to the list. What was the list?
Well, you had,
Well, we had, in Boston, they said distance from
Can't we do
schools,
that?
social services, or treatment centers. That's what they were.
Can we do that?
Yep.
yeah,
There's actually, so a good example is the ABCC. There was a town that didn't have a criteria for basing it upon one applicant versus another for an alcohol license. And the select board actually chose one applicant over another based upon location. But because the criteria wasn't established and defined, the applicant appealed the decision, who got denied the application, appealed it to the ABCC and won the case because there wasn't an established criteria, because the licensing authority at the time said that they didn't want it close to a rotary because of the additional traffic. But there wasn't anything in writing saying that was gonna disqualify them over another application. So that's what Marlene is saying. You need to list out what is advantageous for you, what's highly advantageous, what is the best scenario for a location for you.
Okay.
Is it 1,000 feet from a school?
Or is it
Or
5
is it
miles?
5 miles from a school?
That's what you have to do.
Because,
You have to set
right,
your scale.
so I think for today, though, if we at least start a list of them, and then we can break down distances afterwards. Does that sound reasonable?
So distances from schools,
So you get schools, playgrounds.
what
I
kind
agree.
of playgrounds?
There's something in the sandwich thing where, in their bylaw, they talk about locations frequented by I don't know what the language is, but
Youth
there's,
or juveniles.
yeah, like
Right.
youth, where youth or juveniles congregate
But
or
remember, you
something.
gotta give a definition then at some point.
But
of
how,
youth.
do we have to be that specific? This isn't like an ABCC license, well, I suppose we can always get
It's-
If you're
sued,
going
but.
to.
It's even worse,
If
yeah.
you're going to, if you are gonna make this a comparative criteria, you have to assign scores to it. So if you're going to rank somebody on distance from a school, public school, private school, we have to define all of those things. Preschool, home daycare center,
Okay.
what's in there?
What is a school defined as? And you can put that in that definition. But again, we have to have a starting point, I think.
because zoning and planning don't get into those components.
Yeah, I think
Well,
in the
they're
beginning here,
especially
we
not
just
with site plan
get our
approval.
list started.
Right, they just do a general
Yeah.
overview. It's the licensing authority, what is the definition of your best applicant?
Right.
Versus an adequate applicant versus a not advantageous,
But can you do something like, can you say like more than, well, we already have an established, there's already someplace, I think, an established distance. Unless there's other mitigating factors, I mean,
So if you're going to have those and this is really why you need legal advice, because I
Yeah.
can't give you legal advice, but if you're gonna have subjective, unclear,
If they're gonna be
like,
open-ended and
if you're gonna
vague,
have qualifiers in there, you don't put this in as a comparative criteria. You either define specifically how you're gonna rate someone, or you don't make it you don't use it. But how in the world are you as a board going to assign points based on some squishy, vague language?
Right.
that's why you have to have a definition for all these things. in
Right.
order to- You know,
because
it's
one of your
all,
priorities is to avoid litigation risks.
Yeah.
it's all legalities. You have to, everything has to be defined and
Because
explained.
you want to avoid you want to avoid litigation, but you also want to create a fair and equitable process. And for it to be fair and equitable, everybody has to know how you're going to score up and what you need.
And that's what your definition is for. Your definition says, these are the criteria, and this is how we score it. You know, that's just how it works.
So there may be things you don't make
All right,
criteria.
yeah, so let's, because we have like not too much more time, but let's talk about, besides location, rather than getting bogged down into the details of minimum, so what we need to do is decide what things we want to have as criteria. And let's do some overviews about this.
I think we go with the big items
Yeah, I
and
think like,
weed it down later, next
Yeah.
meeting. Let's,
Location, I'm gonna go with some of the, I'm using the Boston thing.
that's the one I'm looking at.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah,
Location,
so
safety, security.
they have location, the evaluation criteria starts with diversity and inclusion plan. And so, then they have location. Then they have employment plan, which is, you know, we can, and we're just gonna do the categories right now. Then they have community feedback, public support.
So you guys should be telling me what you want to include. Like, are you?
Yeah, we're gonna start with categories, then we're gonna go back and start. I wanna define the categories first, and then we'll,
You just want to define the criteria.
I
is
just
what
wanna
you're
try the
saying?
broad
Okay.
categories,
The-
let's just say.
decide
The
what-
broad-
Diversity,
Yeah, okay.
location, employment plan. Do we wanna use community feedback, public support?
Yes.
I think public support letters is
Okay,
residency.
wait a minute.
that could be a,
So.
We're looking
I'm
at
confused.
all
Are you?
criteria. We're just throwing out all the criteria
Yeah,
that,
so
whether
that's
we,
a-
whether
Okay,
it's
I'm not writing
minimum.
anything down.
whether
no.
it's
I've got
minimum or
one
whether
diversity
it's-
inclusive, diversity and inclusion plan.
Are you using that as a
Location.
criteria?
Yes.
Minimum?
Are you? Are you using that as a criteria?
What did
Diversity
you
and
say?
inclusion plan?
well,
I don't know if it's, I
They
would
have
just
to
look at
provide
social
one.
equity status.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily be more specific in the
I think we
diversity
can't
and
just run
inclusion.
down a list. You guys have to talk and there has to be agreement. And we-
All right, so a
Throwing out the
diversity
diversity.
inclusion plan presented as part of the application must promote equity among the following demographics: minorities, women, veterans, persons with disabilities, people of all gender identities and inclusions. Includes 3 components. So we, aside from the plan, we want to have social equity criteria, which are you one of these? And we want to give points on that, right?
Social equity status.
Okay.
But we don't necessarily have to have the diversity inclusion plan because Boston is identified as one of the 15 or
Okay.
30 30, I think, communities that are disproportionately disadvantaged.
So then we don't need
That's
that.
not our requirement.
Okay.
Only those who are disproportionately disadvantaged, they have to
So
have
we
a
don't need
diversity
that.
plan.
So we have
But I think it's
location,
important-
employment,
As a criteria to have social equity status and the economic empowerment status or the minority business status or the veteran status, all part of that. I think those statuses,
That
indigenous
can be
people
one.
status, however,
so
right?
social equity status,
Yeah.
resident
economic
of Bourne, we're having resident
yeah,
of
but
Bourne.
that's fine tuning it. So the social equity status would be one of the criteria.
And that's
Is resident of Bourne under social equity
No.
No.
No, it's another
But that would be
criteria.
a
That
separate,
would be under,
that would just be separate.
Just resident of Bourne,
Right.
and do we define how long they had to have been a resident of Bourne?
Yes, we have to have a definition.
We'll
That's a
give,
little more-
that'll be comparative will be
Okay.
So Marlene, you should
less
have
than
two-
1 year.
two
like,
out of that.
you know, less than 3 years, so,
I have 2 out of that, social equity status and residency status.
those are 2 different criteria.
2 different criteria.
And those are going in the comparative column.
Well, we're just listing all of it. We're gonna then decide what's minimum and what's
Those are gonna
comparative.
be, yeah.
We're just
resident
throwing
of
out all
Bourne,
the criteria we've been thinking about.
Yeah, I think those will be comparative, because we have said that
Well, we'll
we're
wait
gonna
and-
take people.
We'll
we
wait
may-
and segregate them afterwards. Let's just
Yeah.
get the list together.
Yeah,
So did you say preliminary safety and security plan? Did you say that?
I did.
Someone
Peter
did.
did.
yes, so,
Is that on
let's
the
see.
list?
Safety and security plan.
Preliminary.
It's just so, when you look at them, they're all so different, and like I said, I tried to find one specific, and there's just so many that have different
We gotta
elements
take
that are
bits and pieces,
fantastic, right?
The elements that fit for
Right.
us.
What
know,
about,
like-
professional experience?
Yes. Or
Business plan?
Business plan.
Well, I think those are two different things,
You think, well,
because
yeah, they are.
people have
but-
professional experience in a business, running a business, and then people have a business plan because they've been able to run a business. People have professional experience because they are
They already
in
have
the
one of these
industry
steps.
already.
So there's a minimum requirement of being a business owner and how many years that should be
We-
defined. And then the evaluation criteria would be so many
Professional.
years in.
In the industry.
The industry.
Right,
Right.
And
right.
5 years, 10 years, whatever it is.
Are those two categories, business plan and professional?
I think they're
experience?
separate.
They're separate. They're two
'Cause you
different.
could be
So,
a-
but it's not professional, it's industry experience.
Yes, industry.
Industry experience.
Okay, okay, that's what we mean, right?
Yes.
Industry?
Yes.
Not like a different profession?
No,
No.
because that
Okay.
would be under
Industry.
business.
Okay,
Right.
Because if you've had your own business doing something else, you're business-minded. But if
Maybe
you're
it's
in the
business ownership.
industry, you're already in the
It
industry.
shouldn't exclude people who've never done it either. In
No,
some-
but
some
it-
cases.
But it gives us an opportunity to
No,
give
but
them
if you're
points for
rating
that.
them, they have
You're
highly
rating.
Scoring,
advantageous.
that would be
In
a-
the scoring,
No,
you
I
would
get
say,
it, yeah.
yeah, well, they don't have industry experience, so they're less
They won't get more points.
Yeah, they get less.
But they
points.
could
But they
meet
could
one of
be-
the other definitions
Exactly.
and get a better
They
score
can
than
have
the guy
business
who does.
experience,
So-
right, yeah.
Exactly.
Correct.
How about, sustainability,
You want, like,
renewable energy practices?
Well, that security falls under the location, correct, MJ?
No, that should
No.
be,
Safety
they
and
need their
security
own
plan?
security
It
plan.
does.
They need their own security
We have
plan.
a safety security plan one.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as part of the criteria in Boston, as MJ was looking at, one of them, it's what it says, when you look at theirs,
plan for on-site security personnel, plan for building and product security,
says,
plan for protecting youth, plan for transportation, we don't,
We don't
and
know.
delivery, plan for, so if they have employment plan, they have some stuff here that gives like different criteria and what you get points for, so,
I think employment plan is a good one too, because
Yeah, well,
I
that's
think,
what I
peop-
like,
you
yeah.
know,
yeah, I think I had that.
local.
Oh, you do?
right?
Okay.
Employment plan, location, employment plan.
Are they hiring local people? How much of the population, how many of the employees will be local people? The town.
Yeah, so employment plan is, for Boston is scored in 4 categories. Plan for hiring Boston residents, plan for employment of minorities and women, plan for offering competitive wages and benefits for local residents, plan for employment of individuals with criminal records. Additional considerations
happen.
may include the following for each category.
well, again, their plan's more extensive, because they're disproportionately disadvantaged,
My current company eats all those with a home run.
so they,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So the community feedback support is scored in 2 categories: letters from public officials, letters from community groups. Additional considerations may
So
include.
those would fall under support letters.
Community
Those would be
members,
the comparative
abutters,
part.
community, yeah. There's some
Labor.
good stuff in terms of
Yeah.
the definitions of the Boston
Yes.
thing.
The Boston one
That
has a
makes it
lot.
very comparative, that puts it
Yeah.
in the comparative criteria category. yeah.
Labor and local and enterprise plan. Let's see. Neighborhood compatibility. I get points
Oh, yeah,
for
I saw that, yep.
Yeah. And
But you
odor
need a
control.
That
an
lends
odor
itself
control
to,
plan.
But you need a definition for that and how it fits for us.
Community benefit.
Remember, that
investment.
definition they have doesn't
yeah,
necessarily fit us.
some of them have like an economic value of the business for Bourne.
Economic value for Bourne, you want it, is
No,
that
no,
just
we're
part of
just-
the business plan? Are we
I
good
don't-
now?
Yeah, I
Is
think
this-
that
do we
might
have-
be part of the business
I
plan.
think so too.
Is there, do we want to put local comprehensive plan, or is that like
Strategic plan, or?
A strategic
strategic
plan?
plan? What would you rate for those?
I think it'd be hard to rate.
So,
I
the more criteria we add, the harder the scoring system is gonna be as well.
I think you would probably struggle with having that be equitable, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think it
Bringing
comes
business-
under the
They all, if they're bringing the business
business
into Bourne,
plan.
they all fall
and-
under
yeah,
the strategic plan.
Sustainability.
And I think, yeah, taking a deeper dive into the business plan and employment plan will speak volumes to
That-
that connection
that.
as well.
Whether it's, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Melissa had a 4:30, hard stop.
All right, let's just keep moving. I'll be all right. I'll just get through.
I think you should probably, I think you should probably touch on some of these logistical things.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
I can get up. You can keep going. I mean, there's a night.
No, there's a couple things on here, that, we had originally said that we were gonna have an ad hoc committee that was gonna do this. I think we might have even voted that.
You did.
did.
We did.
You did.
Motion to dissolve it.
Seconded.
Motion to dissolve
The ad hoc.
the ad hoc, and we'll just do this as,
As a board.
the board.
As a
yeah.
workshop.
So motion by Peter, second by Jared. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstention, so,
I'll abstain from that one for a
okay,
moment.
okay. Four, zero, one. Melissa abstained, okay. Televised hybrid remote option. I'm fine with this being televised. I think that gives people transparency. I would prefer not to do a hybrid or remote option
I agree.
because I think it's too hard to manage.
And it's a
For this kind
workshop.
for these workshop discussions, it's just really too hard to manage, so.
However,
Yeah, I was
as
just
far
gonna-
as televised, I think when available, because,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yeah, where Board Community TV is welcome to televise, if they can't do it, it's not gonna hold up the meeting,
Okay, yeah, that's,
right? We all agreed with that?
I personally would prefer hybrid just in case of an emergency, but if it would at least have the option there if somebody was sick or, I mean, we're still not,
But it's like someone from here, because it's a workshop, it's a
Can we-
working.
Can we do that
So it's a
where
little
we can
different
have
than
members
open. I
come
get it, but-
hybrid and not the public? Or does it have to, if we do hybrid, does it have to be open to the public to come hybrid?
The posted meetings, I think you have to,
I'm gonna guess it has to be open to the public.
yeah.
I mean, if we're all in the room, it has to be open to the public anyways. Anyway, we're correct?
I'm
it's open
talking,
to the public
it's
when you
open
come
to the
in.
public here. The question is, it
Hybrid.
open to the public
Okay.
on the hybrid? And it's just more difficult to do a meeting, I think, so,
yeah, no question. And because it is, because it's workshops, we're gonna go into the next workshop. And when we do a finalization where we're voting on everything, that's one thing. But
I think we're gonna bring, I think we're going to have, I've planned having regular select board meetings where we have this as an agenda item too, so that they can be it. I mean, if people feel really strongly that they want them to be hybrid and remote, then, we can do it.
I'm just saying, I don't think that we're gonna miss anything if somebody misses one. Or, because it's,
I guess, I'm
It's a
just thinking in this
continuing
world we live
process,
in, I
yeah.
mean, people get COVID, people get sick, people have agendas and stuff to do, and we're all over the place, and I might be in Kingston one minute, and then I'm down in Falmouth the next minute, and it's just a lot, so I just wanted to make sure that I can be there, or we can all be there, but if everybody wants to do
The next meeting
it,
date will make, right?
so, that's fine,
And
whatever's
then
clever, I
the
guess.
next, this is like a cast in concrete. I mean, if we decide we need to have a hybrid meeting because someone's got a conflict and it's gonna be difficult, they can say, could we please have this as a hybrid meeting, and we'll do it as a hybrid meeting. I think we could do it on a case-by-case basis.
Well, that's what I was saying.
And then if it becomes someone's sick and they say, I'm not gonna be able to come because I have COVID, we could amend the agenda and make it a hybrid meeting. So I think we can have flexibility on the hybrid
Okay.
if there's a board need for it. How's that?
That sounds good.
Okay,
That was my thought,
okay,
just in case.
Hybrid
Yep.
meetings based on necessity.
Yeah.
yeah,
Board's necessity.
Board necessity,
yes. Or, you know, it might become that if we are having town council do some of these, that we actually end up having hybrid meetings with town council.
Yeah, but
because it
that's a
would
board
be-
necessity.
Yeah, yeah,
That still
Right.
falls,
Yeah.
still falls under
Board
board,
necessity.
board
Yes.
necessity.
all right. Now, what about, future meeting schedule? Like, how often do we want to meet to do this? And,
If we can meet every other week.
Well, we've listed it as a priority, so we
That's
need
what I
to
was
get
just
it
gonna
done.
say. Yeah,
And
I
I
was
think
just
a
gonna
lot has to be in place by May 2024, if I recall a certain date, May, might be May 1st, 2024. We have to have like the,
Well, if we
Municipal
have to
equity
go
policy
to town meeting for money,
Yeah,
Yeah, we gotta sell some,
we can't get, if we need, like, if we have to go to town meeting for money, then we have to
well,
go
we're
to
not,
town meeting for money.
yeah, but, it would, I would,
2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks? Everybody good with 2 weeks?
on a different day of the week.
That's how it
Not
originally
on
was.
a-
yeah, so what day of the week is good for everybody?
So 2 weeks is the
Get my phone.
week of March 4th, right?
Yep,
Oh, jeez. This is the worst week.
So we already have a
Oh, that's
policy
much worse.
subcommittee meeting that week. I am at a training all day on Thursday, the 7th.
yeah, so I think we're doing a policy subcommittee meeting for the private acceptance of private roads, because that's going back to the board, and we want to have a walkthrough for that. So you want to go till the next meeting, the next week, or,
The
So-
next week would work great for me, only because bi-weekly, I have a 4:30 every single week. And
So
this
we
is
wanna
supposed
get
to be
on the
one of
off
them.
Get off
Right.
we want to get on the off
Right,
week.
right now we're on the on week, so
So
if
the
it
week
was
of the
that next
11th.
one, it
the
would
week
be
of the
perfect.
11th to the
Yeah.
15th.
Yes, the week of the 11th.
And you don't want Wednesdays?
I don't care.
okay.
Any
Wednesday's
day's
fine
with
as
me.
long as it's not like
Wednesday's
this
fine.
one,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
bi-weekly, because I'm out at 4:30 every day.
So let's
I'm
do
on.
Wednesday the 13th.
And do you want to do it like 3:30? We'd have to be out of here for
Better
Board
for
of
you,
Health
Jerry.
by 5:30, I think.
I would prefer not to go past 4:30.
Okay.
It's so true. Start at 3 and gets to 90 minutes. Cause after an hour, you start losing focus after
Yeah.
a while, so let's say 90-minute meeting.
Speak for yourself, mister.
Well, it depends
I
what
can go
time of
all
the day.
day long, Peter.
I mean, you couldn't get here till like 3:50. Is that going to be a
No,
problem?
no, I
Is
can,
that- is that-
I can alter my schedules. It's just, I had this one already
You had
set.
already, okay,
Yeah.
so you need,
This
all
was
right.
already set, yeah, yeah.
So we've got 3:13, 3 to 4:30, right?
Wednesday, March 13th, 3 to 4:30.
Okay. And then we could do the 27th. You want to book ahead?
Yeah.
The 27th?
My calendar, I don't have my phone, so I have no idea. I'll have to hope.
Liz and I both have conflicts with the 27th.
Okay. Do we want to schedule another one, or do we want to wait until the 13th to schedule the next one?
Let's just wait.
Yeah, I think you're probably better off to wait till,
And then do we want Brian at the 13th? Or,
are we ready for that? I don't know.
I think, so Brian's just gonna ask me what you guys wanna talk about, so I think we should spend a meeting where you kind of draft up your list of legal,
okay,
questions for legal review.
okay. And there, he is going to be here for the 19th. Well, I don't want to pack any more onto that, so, all right. So we'll just, for now, do March 13th, 3 to 4:30, and then we'll figure out the schedule after that. So I guess maybe our homework would be to think about the criteria that we've set out for location, employment plan, community feedback, public support, social equity status, residency of Bourne, safety and security, business plan, industry experience, and sustainability / green energy kind of thing. And then for us to think about what minimum criteria and what
What is gonna be a minimum and what's
minimum
gonna be a comparative?
and comparative, so that when we come into that meeting, we have some basis for thought.
And I think that thinking about the scoring system as well, if we're thinking about the criteria, because the scoring system's based on how many criteria we have. So like the 100-point scoring system was pretty easy, right? But then if you're talking, you're adding a whole slew of
Well, we haven't,
criteria,
yeah,
then
we have to,
figure
we'll
out how
have
that
to.
works.
If we have
right,
20
right,
things
Might
that
right.
are
narrow
worth
down.
5
Might
points,
not-
or 100
Points,
points.
right,
Put out
exactly.
all
I'm
those
saying.
possibilities, but we
Right,
might decide
right.
that we only want 6.
Well, exactly, yeah. So how's it gonna look,
Yeah.
the whole thing?
Okay. Is there anything else? Do you guys want to make any comment?
Just real quick, I know
Yeah.
it's been a long meeting, and I'll actually, Steve Stroney, Monument Beach, and I'll share more thoughts by way of email. But what I had suggested before, which I think kind of fits in with your framework, is a 100-point scoring system, 4 major categories, each one worth 25 points, which you have 5 members, each one does 5. And I suggested the social equity, where you grade them based on whether they fit into one of the state's categories or if they align with it. Because you may not get a social equity applicant, but you still want to give credit for somebody who aligns with those goals. The LCP, you folks know that's near and dear to my heart, but that gives a candidate, an applicant, the opportunity to look through the LCP and say, hey, listen, these are all the points I hit on, the economic factors, the local ownership, things of that nature. Local ownership, I have that as a standalone category, because I think we all agree that one of the most key factors here is local ownership, management, employees, and whatnot. And then, probably in my mind, the category that is the most important is the business experience and plan. Because a lot of these licenses that never came to fruition, they didn't have a business plan, they didn't have capital, they didn't have experience, and it was a waste of a license. And we don't want to make that same mistake. As far as letters of support, that was a mistake I think a lot of communities made. They got letters from state senators and representatives and everything. And the question then became, did people get licenses because they were politically connected? Or did they get licenses because they deserved a license? And frankly, a letter of support from somebody in the community that doesn't know anything about the marijuana industry, it's not really worth a whole lot. It should, a guy who's lived here all his life, he could get 100 letters of support next week. That doesn't mean he's a better businessman than somebody else. So the letters of support, I hope you'll reconsider that.
I don't think we put it in.
Well, it was
It was
mentioned.
discussed as
Yeah.
part
Community
of,
feedback,
right.
public support.
part of the community
Yeah.
feedback.
And then the other thing is, Bourne, all summer long, the planning board did the overlay district, and they eliminated essentially 95% of Bourne, and a lot of it was based on where churches are and playgrounds and things of that nature. And that was what came to town meeting. Here's the overlay, here's the buffers, because the buffers were consistent with what the state says. And that's what the town voted on overwhelmingly. They said, these are the zoning bylaws we want. So in my mind, for the select board to go back in and say, well, we're going to rewrite the buffers and we're going to rewrite distances and what it can be close to and whatnot, essentially what you would be doing, essentially, is rewriting the zoning bylaws.
I'm sorry, we're gonna stop you there.
Okay.
I kind of disagree, because we didn't say that we were gonna set those, we said we were gonna do comparative. So if a location is better than a different one in whatever criteria that we might set, we're not rewriting anything, we're just, is there going to be a criteria? And we haven't figured out the criteria, so we don't know what they are yet.
And that's fair, MJ. I'm
Yeah.
just, these are all the thoughts. I'm just trying to get them out there. But I do, because I've spent all summer at those meetings and I watched them shrink it down. So I just, and that's what was voted on. So I think, keep the process as efficient as possible and streamlined as possible, there isn't a duplication of effort. Like, now somebody gets dinged because they're near something that, under the zoning bylaws.
Well, if we're setting in our RFP a minimum requirement that they're in the overlay zone, that is a requirement,
Oh,
and that
yeah.
is a
Of
criteria,
course.
and that we need to set that criteria.
Oh, yeah, and I agree with that.
Okay,
the
and we
planning
haven't
board-
said anything is comparative yet, so, except
I
for
know.
maybe accessibility and on-site, and maybe distance from recreation, because to me, it might be preferable that someone not be next to, if I had to compare between this one, and this one's next to Keith Field, and this one isn't next to any school, any recreation or anything, that would be a comparative criteria for my judgment. So that's kind of, it's a comparison, it's not a disqualifier.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank
Are we
you.
good? No, are we ready to,
Motion
think
to
so.
adjourn?
motion, second?
Unanimous.
Oh, I didn't hear somebody.
You guys said it at the same
Motion
time.
by
Oh,
Peter,
okay.
second by Anne Marie, it was a tie. Tie goes to the runner. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? It's unanimous, all right.